that he can advise on how to go about it.
Yeah.
But for this session, from the beginning of the session, we ask that you start to drop your questions as they come.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because there may be a point that you appreciate, ask a question. So
Yeah.
drop it on menti.com. I don't know if it's
Absolutely.
ready for us to put it up.
Yes.
Menti.com, and then you put drop your questions here. So
we can-
we'll be sharing it as we go. We
Yeah.
don't have to put it up now, but we can share it as we go so that people can keep on adding their questions. Nothing left behind.
You're right. So what will happen as the session is ongoing, you'll see it on your screens, giving you directions on where to share your questions.
Yeah.
As you can see from the previous session, what we had, we're going to have the next slide as well for this particular session.
Yes.
These questions already have been shared so that at least we can see how far we can respond to some of them. Some of them are similar, and so some of the answers will be quite direct
Yeah.
to that. So thank you so much for that.
There's a question here, I think, Mana, you need to give some direction.
Which one is that?
Can you take ILOs to Germany for 1 month training?
That's a good one.
It's a good question, isn't it?
It's a good question, yeah.
Mtetezi wa ILOs.
I have an idea who can answer that question.
Who can?
Director, once they call you back here, director, you can ask that. You can answer that question whether you can take ILOs to Germany for 1 month training. I think he's the only one who can answer.
Just
that.
1 month.
I might say yes, and then they come to me.
Wakingoja.
I
It'll
don't
be
have their
trouble.
tickets, you know.
But just 1 month. Anything longer,
Yeah.
we send you away for good, isn't it?
You're right.
Great. So at this point in time, we want to get into the next session, Maina.
Absolutely. Let's straight away.
Yes.
But
So
just
the-
before then,
Go ahead.
as you do your banter,
As I do my banter, I'm here talking to myself. But let me just talk to you because now I'm here with all of you. I want to appreciate all of you who have come to see us personally and shown us that you're tweeting. We appreciate it. And we'll recognize those tweets at the end of today's session. So keep on tweeting, keep on engaging with people. The hashtag is Tvet Industry Linkages. Please make sure that you post it. Go ahead, Maina.
yeah, I've just been given a name of our moderator. It's a unique one. It's not
Okay.
what you have.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I love the name. I'll be the one to introduce it.
Go ahead.
So please, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to Mr. Desire Njamwe. A round of applause to Desire. And I think his name resonates with Tvet today.
It's a desire.
Because this is something we want our young people to desire to be, right? Makofi tafadhali to him. Karibu sana. There you have it.
Karibu.
Yeah, we had, the bar was set by the previous moderator here, and so you can only go higher. But because of your name, our expectations are already high. Thank you so much. What's the session about, by the way?
This session is
Yes.
about equity and diversity in Tvet.
Wow.
Promoting gender and inclusion in skills training.
Excellent.
I love it.
Excellent. Yes, we can hand it over back to Desire
Yes,
to
to
take us
introduce
through.
his
Yeah.
panelists.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for those nice remarks. We save the best for? We save the best for last. So this session is going to be the best. And why is it the best? Because we are looking at the question of inclusivity in our TVETs. That is what we are going to be discussing. And to ensure that it is the best, we have a full panel. So all the panelists that were expected to be here, all of them are here, and they cast across. So allow me to welcome my panelists, and then I give a brief introduction of my panelists before I take you to the next session. So my panelists, please welcome to the podium. Is the panelist inclusive? What part of inclusivity is missing in this panel composition? How many are they? No. What is the total number of my panelists? Oh, Esabu, we are about skills and training. What is the total number of my panelists? There is 6, 5. 5. What is the 2/3 of 5? Yeah? So we have our panelists on board. I'll start from my far end right in terms of introductions. We have Mr. Crispin Afifu. Mr. Crispin Afifu is a gender mainstreaming expert, a gender and policy gender mainstreaming expert. He has been in this field for the longest time that I have known him as a person. But in terms of career-wise, he's been on this field for over the last 15 years. He is a he for she forefront champion, a he for she forefront policy champion. And in terms of practice, he has actually, in terms of practice interaction with Tvet, he's one of the technical lead, actually the technical head lead in terms of helping Tvet and the country adopt the necessary policies for purposes of inclusivity. So that is Mr. Crispin. Next, after Mr. Crispin, we have Madam Tekla Chimombo. Chimombo is a principal of the Current Technical Training Institute. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take note. She has over 13 years experience as a teacher and a trainer, 15 out of which are in the Tvet industry. Who has that number of experience in the industry here? One. There is one. And do you note a common element? Both are? Thank you. Our third panelist is Milka Makato. Milka Makato is an educationist of over 30 years, 15 of which have been in the Tvet. She is a gender champion. She steers gender mainstreaming and persons with disability inclusion processes at the Kenya School of Tvet. And therefore, we have a lot to borrow from her industry. And then we have Sally. Sally Nduta is the CEO of the United Disabled Persons of Kenya. Again, a champion of inclusivity, a champion of institutions or organizations of persons with disability for the last 15 years. And then finally, we have an industry player from the Kenya Private Association Sector Alliance, and that is Madam Priscilla Kerebi. She is the vice chair of the education sector at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, I want us, and I invite you to give them a round of applause even before we begin. Thank you. So as we begin, I want to invite Mr. Crispin to give us a perspective. Remember, the theme of this particular session is inclusivity, gender and inclusivity in the Tvet. So Mr. Crispin, kindly take us through the perspective so that we can appreciate where we are coming from. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Are you happy to be here? Are you really happy to be here? I want to appreciate those who've been here since this session began, and most importantly, those that have been working tirelessly to ensure that it happens. When I was asked to speak in this session, it got me thinking on what is it that we should share that can make sense to all the delegates that have come from the government all the way to the civil society organizations, and even those that are in the Tvet ecosystem. And for that reason, I wish to thank everyone that has been involved in the conceptualization of this event. Now, our session, just as you see in the program, it is more about equity and diversity in Tvet, and it's more about promoting gender and inclusion in skills training. And when you look at that, it's quite big and deep and also wide. But most importantly, the team that is here, plus what we are saying now, it is going to add value to what has been discussed since Wednesday. And it's more about addressing the challenges that are related to equity and diversity. And as we sit here, I'm looking at ladies and gentlemen of different age sets, and I want to appreciate you for coming. And then together, we walk this journey and to make it real as far as issues of gender, inclusivity, and of course, diversity when it comes to training are concerned. Now, this is what I want to say. The number one, we are discussing this at a very critical time in the history of this country, a time when, of course, the conversation about gender equality, equity, and, of course, diversity and inclusion across all sectors, be they social, political, cultural, and, of course, economic, are ripe at such a time as this for us to discuss, and we cannot ignore the gender subject any longer. And why then gender and inclusion in skills building? Allow me to read this. This is a quote from the World Economic Forum, 2016. They say this, that gender dynamics in the world of work continue to be a reality that it needs to be addressed for equal and inclusive participation of women and men. And some of the predictive studies have already opined that while jobs are threatened by redundancy, and you've seen this in Kenya and elsewhere, on the other side, there are sectors that are experiencing growth because of course, issues of adopting to skills change and training. And only then this approach would close the gap between the limitless new opportunities and potential massive dislocation of jobs that is being experienced in different sectors. This, of course, is not to mean that, on the other hand, again, what I want to say is that we in Kenya, for example, right now, then we need to really think through on how to make this sort of specific to the industry, to the region, to the occupation, as well as the abilities of various stakeholders to manage the impending changes. I know most of us have interacted reports by ILO, and one that is key, I would want to pick a statistic there, talks about the data that it looks in the female workforce participation at about 54.4% of female 15 years and above, which of course is predicted to change or increase to about 55.3% by 2030. But when you look on the other side, you realize that there's a lot of informality nowadays. A lot of young people are in the informal work system, and these are people between 15 and 24 years of age. And other reports are also showing that steadily the number of young people is actually worsening in terms of unemployment and the crisis that we are facing in Kenya and elsewhere. Now, what that tells us then, when you look at the global current trends and the economic recession that is being felt everywhere, this situation then is forcing majority of the young people to work long hours under insecure work environments. And of course, these work environments are characterized by low productivity and of course, meager earnings. Now, there is a genesis to why this kind of environment is existing even to us today. But I want to appreciate that this inaugural meeting, because then it's addressing the real issue. How do we increase and improve on the skill set? How do we ensure that we are able not only to make these young people sort of to be ready for the job market, but they can be employers themselves, that they can create employment all by themselves. Another paper, this is the Africa Economic Outlook paper by the African Development Bank, says this, that according to this report, which was published back in 2019, that in Africa right now we need to create about 12 million new jobs annually to prevent the rising rates of unemployment. But it also goes further and says that throughout the world right now, about 375 million workers globally will have to master fresh skills as their current jobs evolve alongside the rise of digital economy, automation, and capable machines. Now, this brings us to this point where we have to discuss, when we look at the digital economy, we look at automation, because we're in the Industrial 4.0 era. How then do we ensure that young people here, we're talking about men and women, are able really to master the necessary skill to help them to be relevant in the job market, but also to be able to create jobs themselves. Now, that brings in the element of the shifts that we need to have in terms of critical adjustments, which even we have seen in the sector. We have seen within the industry. And of course, on our side, then, we are thinking this way, that in order for us to have young people or a team that go through the Tvets, that will be able to rebuild and enable resilience, generate new job opportunities, then we need to do the following. We need to ensure that we skill them, we also upskill them, and even reskill them. So it's a process of skilling, upskilling, and reskilling, so that then we are so relevant with the current economic times. And by so doing, we're going to create employment, we're going to reduce unemployment, and we're also going to reduce underemployment. And on the other side, we're going to increase productivity and also improve livelihoods, generally, from the individual to the community, to the family, to the society, to the national economy, but also even in the globe. As I come close to some of the things I wanted to bring to our attention, then we ask ourselves, in the ongoing fourth industrial revolution, which is characterized by a fusion of technologies, of course, these technologies are also blurring the lines between the physical, the digital, and also even the biological spheres, which are also, of course, altering where we work, how we live, and of course, how we relate to each other. Are we, as Tvets, for example, providing that necessary skill set to the people that are going through our systems? Now, in this space, I'm sure, since Wednesday, we've talked about STEAM. In this case, we're talking about science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Now, when you look at the panel, and as it was asked, looking into the numbers, we have my colleagues here, plus myself, and I, being a champion of women issues and female youth issues in this country, one thing that I know and I want to pick up is that we know now that there's demand for industry in terms of relevant skills. It outstrips the supply. And that has been a complaint that the industry has been saying for far too long. But I want to thank the GIZs, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, with the dual training programs, which are coming in to bridge the gap. But most importantly, we also know that women have been significantly underrepresented in those STEAM fields, and of course in Tvets and in higher education institutions. This has resulted to low transition rates of female graduates to jobs in crucial sectors, and in this case I choose to pick on manufacturing. Manufacturing, to us who are in the gender space, is one of the non-traditional sectors where we need as many women as possible to get involved. But then when you continue to understand the situation and the current landscape in Kenya, you realize that, yes, over the years, and I think she will attest to that, for the 30 years she's been in the industry, she's seen growth in the number of institutions offering Tvet courses, but most importantly, growth in the number of male and female students who are going through this. But even with that growth on our space, within the researches that are ongoing, we realize that there still exist gender disparities between female and male students and staff, and even those that are within the category that we can call vulnerable groups, and that's why we're talking about inclusion. And these barriers, we see them, of course, are coming out due to issues like internalized attitudes and social mindset, that then these courses are not really for us. And I will say an example, that I was in Galbatura in Isiolo, one of the Tvets there. That year, it was about 2018, 2019, we are doing a gender policy for Isiolo County. There were about 300 students, and in that institution there were 5 ladies, and all these 5 ladies were in dressing and tailoring or dressmaking, things like that. Out of 300 students in Galbatura at that time. And maybe the numbers have increased, but that tells you that even when they live there, even if they were to get in the industry, their number is, what is 5%? What's 5 of 300 in terms of percentage? You do the math. It's so meager, right? It's a 0.something%. And so if there was an industry that required that skill set from them, they will still be a minority in terms of those that are represented. And these statistics, they speak for themselves. Of course, the issues of unfriendly training environment, but I want to appreciate the institutions that are here. They're trying to make the environment more friendly. The issues of information and knowledge gaps, and we realize when we engage with the industry, they tell us that we only take the ones that are coming out of these training institutions, but the numbers are very few, and so we work backwards. And when you work backwards, it all goes to the family level, transition to primary school, transition to high school, and the numbers keep dropping in the pipeline. By the time they are done, they're very few. And so when you talk about gender equality in terms of representation in the workplace environment or in the workforce, the numbers still continue to be few. But then we also know that these are sectors that are profitable, the non-traditional sectors. Then how do we pull them up so that they are able to engage? And of course, as we speak through this, we realize the intersections between, of course, be the young women, the issue of skilling, the issues of unemployment, then of course when they enter into employment, the issues of retention, issues around promotion and advancement. All this are related to issues of training and skills building. What we said, skilling, reskilling, and upskilling. Now, as at this level, then we realize three things. There is a study we did some time back with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers looking into the women in manufacturing. And a few things we found out that time in terms of formal employment, there were about 73% men in the formal work employments within the manufacturing sector and about 17% women workforce in manufacturing. Now, then of course, we are looking for the reasons. The reasons were issues about skill set gaps. Then the women taking up lower level jobs with lower pay and few opportunities for career advancement. Issues of underrepresentation of women reinforces negative gender norms and stereotypes, even in those kind of industries. And again, we've talked about skills mismatch. Now, all these things, as I close, I'm appreciating the constellation of organizations that are here or institutions. And I see, of course, like a moderator there coming from the NDC. And of course, we have the State Department for Technical and Vocational Education, the State Department for Gender, the Tvet, the COG, NITA, KEPSA, who are here, CATIC and APCO. All these institutions, we now need to really realize that gender integration in the courses, in learning and everything, shouldn't be a matter of hindsight, but should be a matter of being intentional from the beginning and looking and working through back the stream to see where do we lose, for example, the girl child in this process and how can we get her back. Or in Kenya here, there are two documents, or at least beyond the National Policy on Gender and Development, beyond the Vision 2030, there are two documents. One is the Continental Education Strategy for Africa. That's 2016-2025. One thing that comes through there is that there is a commitment to expand Tvet opportunities at both secondary and tertiary levels and to strengthen linkages between the world of work and education and training systems. Now, this beautiful document are documents that we need now to internalize, interrogate, and see how do we adopt them for our own use. Another document is the Science, Technology, and Innovation Strategy for Africa 2020-2024, which has key pillars that makes us to be sensitive and responsive to the issues of gender inequalities that are being displayed within the Tvet. Now, for those who are in the industry, and this is my last point, is why are we talking about inclusivity? Why are we talking about gender equity, issues of equality at this point in time? I answer this by looking at the rate of the return on investment on gender equality. And this is what one of the studies indicates to us. This is a study by the ILO. It says that organizations or enterprises that really adopt this, they have or benefit from the following. Number one, they have what we call 57% enhanced company reputation. And this is an investment to the company in the long term. We have engaged with companies and they say, for us really to make even the built environment favorable, we have to invest a lot of money that we are not sure when we will recover it. But when a case is built, a business case, on how this can enhance company reputation, on how this is going to enhance the ability to attract and retain talent, which is about 59% if you are a gender-responsive organization. And if you also are a gender-responsive organization, there's a 37% chance of better ability to gauge consumer interest and demand and resonate productively. Then, of course, the last one being that there is a 59% chance of greater creativity, innovation, and openness. Now, creativity and innovation is with this that we have left out there, the ones that we've left behind. So this session is to help us to match this and see why we need to put it together. And in conclusion, then I say, the education, reskilling, and upskilling of women and men is not an option, but a necessity which Tvets must rise up to and do with gender considerations in mind, again, not as an hindsight, but to meet any regulatory obligations, but as an institutionalized approach to enhancing the quality of trainees or workforce. And by this, we will be channeling out a workforce that is ready, a workforce that is gender responsive, a workforce that is eager to make things work for better. And at the end of the day, we shall grow the economy together.
Let us give him another round of applause. And as we do so, I want to catch my panelists off guard and start with the immediate speaker, Crispin. You've just given us a summary of the advantages of engaging in diversity, in skilling, reskilling, and education, what we are likely to get. But Madam Saleh, in those statistics from the economic survey that he talked about, he gave statistics about gender. There was no statistics about diversity in terms of persons with disability or vulnerable persons. What is your take on that?
Thank you very much. Good morning once again. Yeah, like you've rightly said, the issue of data is very important, especially when it comes to persons with disabilities, because data is what is used to inform policy, is what is used to inform how resources are allocated through Tvets, and also it's what also employers use to make decisions, in the workplace. So the question of data is very important, and often you'll find a lot of times data is not disaggregated to reflect, the situation of persons with disabilities. Particularly, we need to understand that persons with disabilities are diverse. So they're not a homogeneous persons. We have persons with physical disabilities. We have people with visual disabilities. We have people with intellectual disabilities. We have people with psychosocial disabilities, among others. So we need to do a lot, even when you talk about skilling and employability, in terms of tracking the numbers in terms of enrollment, and knowing how many of these youth with disabilities also transit successfully into the industry. So the question of data is still important. Thank you.
I would also like you to try and attempt that question on data, but more specifically, in terms of your years of experience, how many Tvet trainers have you experienced from the persons with disability? And how has in your own measure, been their impact in the training of students in the Tvet institution or in the bigger setup of education?
Good morning. I'll give some background first. Student enrollment in Tvet institutions has increased tremendously, yet there still exists gender disparities among male and female students that we enroll. According to the Ministry of Education Strategic Plan 2018-2022, the country experienced inequalities in access to Tvet, especially in regard to participation of females and students with special needs. According to the Economic Survey report, the survey was conducted in 2021, and the report was released in 2022. According to that report, in chapter 15 I read on education and training, I found that the number of female students enrolled in Tvet programs was 42.5%, while the males who enrolled in Tvet institutions were 57.5% of the total population of students then, standing at 97,237 in 2021, and 5% of whom were in engineering and construction, while 95% were in ICT-related courses. These numbers indicated that fewer females enrolled in Tvet institutions compared to the target set by the Ministry of Education, requiring that 50% of the students enrolled in the institution should be male and 50% should be female. Besides that, I want to give the position of current Technical Training Institute being a special needs establishment. In Karen, for example, we have made great strides towards the ministry's target. We have a population, current student population stands at 1,410. Of that, we have 48.4 females and 51.6 are males of that total population in 2023. But I know there are barriers in this. There are barriers in the enrollment of these students. One of them is attitudinal. Our communities are still reeling in the understanding that women can only be heard, but they should not have a say. That continues to affect us. Communities in Kenya today, believe it or not, look back at where you come from and you realize that most females will drop out at the KCPE level. Others drop out and they marry off, early marriages, early pregnancies, and so on. We also have the challenge of financial constraints. In families, they would prefer to take a male to school and not a female. We also have unfriendly training environments where people perceive that certain jobs cannot be done by a certain gender. I drive on the roads and I'm very keen. I stare at the drivers of the trucks, the long distance trucks. I rarely see females driving those trucks. One time I stopped at Mtito Andei when I saw a female driver on board a truck, a very long truck. I went to her. I congratulated her. I was carried away. And she told me she was trying that, and she was a former student of the former Mombasa Technical Training Institute. She told me she did automotive engineering and she chose to do driving and drive those trucks up to Southern Sudan. I was very impressed. I bought her lunch. There is also a challenge in terms of information and knowledge gaps, especially for us to students with disabilities. In homes, they are segregated. They are alone. In their quietness, for example, for us, they are deaf. They are alone in the homes. They prefer being in school. But there is a gap in access to information and knowledge. And those are some of the challenges. But the above barriers in Kenya, in our TVETs, can be tackled by our TVET institutions to urgently embark on developing responsive policies and initiatives and interventions through affirmative action, like I had a member panelist here mention about affirmative actions. So it calls upon us at TVET institutions to come up with those initiatives through affirmative actions, for example, through fees payment, the funding. And we could recommend, give priority to our females to encourage them to enroll. And also job opportunities, they are there overseas through the State Department of TVET. We could have these female students given priority in recommending them for jobs overseas. I don't know whether I have addressed what was raised.
Thank you. You have tried.
I could probably do more.
Yeah, we'll take the next round.
Okay.
We will just put it pending. But I want each of us to try and address this particular question, starting from Madam Makiko. How can companies and Tvet institutions ensure that gender-based disparities are addressed to promote inclusivity and equal access to skills training? Milka, Madam Milka.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Coming from the Tvet background, I come from Kenya School of Tvet, where we train the trainers who go to train the trainees in the Tvet ecosystem. There are a number of ways that Tvets can ensure that gender-based disparities are addressed so that matters inclusivity and equal access to skills training can be achieved. And one of, we did a research in 2021 sponsored by Colleges and Institutes Canada. And we went to all the Tvet institutions in Kenya just to find out the barriers that were restricting, equal access and inclusion. And one of the biggest barrier that was identified was the structures. The structures that we have, the facilities that we have, sometimes will make or bring about that disparity. For example, you'll find that in most of the engineering workshops, we do not have changing rooms for female. And so when they go to such workshops and there is no place where they can change, and they are expected just to wear their overalls in an open place, that can sometimes be restrictive. Another barrier that, of course, can inhibit equal access is the curricula. How is our curricula structured in terms of the materials, the examples, everything, the content that goes into it? We need to relook into our curricula so that it is not gender blind. Gender blind is where we just look at sexes without really going into the respective needs, priorities, and interests of the respective genders. So we need to look at our curricula so that it is very open and it encourages both gender in terms of equal access. Then how we market our information. I know a lot has gone into how we market our courses. What pictures do we use for those courses that we want to attract, whether male or female? Because we have courses that are female dominated as well as courses that are male dominated. In our websites, in our marketing materials, what pictures are we using? Are they discouraging someone, or are they encouraging all the kind of gender that we require? So then the other issue that we found was a barrier was awareness. How much are we engaging communities as institutions so that we can be able to reduce the gender biases, the stereotypes that exist? We need to step up and ensure that we really create a lot of awareness, even at the institutional level. And I want to thank GIZ because they have now developed a gender short course that will be used to create awareness to the trainers who are running the dual program, as well as the in-company trainers who will be receiving the trainees when they go to the company. That is the right direction that we should be taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Milka. Priscilla, you can give it a take.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I think I'll just pick up from what Milka was saying when it comes to gender-biased stereotyping. So I think even when these students are in high school, how do they pick their careers? What guides them? How do they decide which area to go to? Is it because of the people they interact with? Do we give them access to mentors who can guide them so that they know that it doesn't matter what your gender is? If you're interested in a certain career, you're able to pursue it. And then also, in the industries, we've seen that there are some fields that have disparities that are more prevalent. Especially for girls, we know they will always go towards humanities or courses that look like they are easy. So there's a time, last year actually, the Technical University of Mombasa and the State Department of Tvet came together, they partnered to come up with a tracer database for us to know which students have graduated and need jobs. And we partnered with them, that is KEPSA partnered with them, so that we can be able to tell which graduates are available so that we can partner them with our organizations. Maybe what we can request is to have that database, maybe to be in gender, so that we can know how many girls are taking plumbing. So if I have an opportunity to hire a female plumber graduate, that would be helpful. And then we know young people are also very early adopters of technology. So at KEPSA we have the Ajira Digital Program. The program is inclusive. It helps to get young people, women, even people with disabilities, because apart from just getting jobs, they're also able to get their own, they can be self-employed because they have got tools which they can access, which allow them to trade, to do online. Yeah.
Thank you. Just where you stopped, I want to request you that you give us further details as KEPSA, other than the Ajira program. What perhaps are the initiatives you have taken to try and, bring down that disparity, bring all persons of different diversities into the workforce?
Okay. So we together with you actually, Ngek, we did develop a gender mainstreaming policy. So it gives guidelines and it enables different organizations, depending on the sector. It's very sector specific. So it allows sectors to be able to onboard young people. So it's very, so it gives access to organizations to be able to understand how they can be able to onboard young people and to be able to
So to disabilities?
So for the persons with disabilities, we are now working on a policy that will, so we know the government we have a bill that compels companies for 5% of your workers to be persons with disabilities. And I know Sarah is going to speak more on that, but we know there are barriers, we know there are challenges for most organizations, especially infrastructural. So those are areas that we are trying to encourage companies so that if they need any sort of incentives from the government to be able to put up these facilities to take on people with disabilities.
Thank you. Organizations for persons with disability, what would be your insights into how then to onboard these particular people in order to broaden the diversity, both at the employment environment as well as the training environment? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So speaking as somebody from civil society, and also specifically from an organization of persons with disabilities, and when I say an organization of persons with disabilities, this is essentially They're abbreviated as OPDs. These are organizations that are owned by persons with disabilities, governed by persons with disabilities themselves. So it means persons with disabilities themselves, of course, understand their issues and they're best able to articulate. So OPDs are also civil societies in their own right, as I've explained. So I just want to give our own example as UDPK when it comes to supporting, skilling of young persons with disabilities. And in this explanation, I'll also emphasize the importance of partnerships because all of us here are different stakeholders. Each of us hold a piece of the puzzle. And when we come together, then we will make inclusion effective and more successful and more meaningful for trainees with disabilities. So at UDPK, we have a partnership that is supported by GIZ or GIZ. And we are working in collaboration with the National Industrial Training Authority, NITA, and also Site Savers, which is an international NGO. And what we've been doing is we've been enrolling young people with disabilities through the NITA programs. There are different programs that they have, whether it's electrical engineering and catering, and a number of different courses. So what we do as UDPK is we work with NITA so that even the instructors can be able to deliver the courses from an inclusive perspective, so that when you're in class as an instructor, you're able to deliver the sessions well knowing that also there are students with disabilities. So we've done trainings for instructors at NITA, particularly their branch in industrial area. That's where we've partnered. That's where a lot of students with disabilities are based. And the idea is to also support NITA to become inclusive. And Madam has spoken about the survey that was conducted. One of the biggest challenges that we have in Tvet is around physical accessibility or accessibility of spaces. If I'm a learner who is a wheelchair user, you'll find there are a lot of challenges maneuvering through the institution by myself because persons with disabilities want to be independent. So you would want to, if you're using a wheelchair, you want to be able to maneuver by yourself. So the idea is to be able to support NITA. Of course, we know changing physical spaces is a process. It doesn't take, it's not an event. But the idea is to support the institution to be able to understand that physical access is very important, Also, Madam has spoken about accessibility of information, the materials, reading materials. How do we work in partnership to make sure that, even students with visual disabilities, if I'm blind, I'm able to, interact with materials or books that I need. So that's one example. And we have had a number of students. Currently, we have over 150 students who have gone through NITA successfully. And they have graduated and they have gone into internship, and a number of them are getting jobs. So I want also to give another example. We also have the Bridge IT Academy, still based at NITA. And when Crispin was giving his perspective, he talked about the issue of digitization. And you'll find for many years, persons with disabilities, young people with disabilities have been boxed, You're told, because you have a disability, and we have even seen this, even with our higher institutions of learning, you'll find a lot of learners with disabilities will either go to Kenyatta University, and then you'll find very few of them in the other universities. But what we are trying to demonstrate with the Bridge IT Academy is that young people with disabilities also have an interest in IT, and we are using the Cisco certification, and they are going through a 9-month course where they do networking, cybersecurity, and we have also partnered with Safaricom. So this is a conversation we've had with Safaricom right from the start of the project. So how we found effective is you also have the employers in the conversation when you're beginning the program, so that they are well aware after 9 months, we have this many learners who will come out through a graduation process, and we can take them. So we currently have 2 groups of students. Now there are 60 of them, and they are young people with diverse disabilities who have gone through the IT Academy that is based at NITA. And Safaricom has taken 33 of them. They have given them internship. So that is something to celebrate. Please give a clap to that.
A good applause. That is dual. That is working.
Yeah. So what we are saying, we would want to demonstrate that partnership is important. And let's begin talking to employers. Of course, here represented by KEPSA and probably FKE. Let's talk to employers, even as we are skilling, so that we know what we are skilling for. Yeah? Employers have often said a lot of graduates are out here, but they don't have the skills that we need. So those are the 2 examples that I wanted to give. And the reason why it is important to provide partnership is because Tvets need to understand what are the reasonable accommodation needs for learners with disabilities. So you'll find a learner who is blind has different needs from a learner who has an intellectual disability. So it's very important to partner with an organization of persons with disabilities like ourselves through a training process. And even NITA can tell you that they have, had a lot of understanding around inclusion, and we would want these to be taken on board as part of the programs of NITA, so that we don't have standalone programs for trainees with disabilities. Thank you.
Milka and Tekla, very quickly, from a perspective of the institutions themselves, training of trainers in the Tvets and training of students, question of persons with disability. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. At Kenya School of Tvet, we are very intentional about being inclusive, and we enroll trainers to be who are both living with disability and those who are abled. And we have provided various ways or support systems. So like we have had visually impaired trainees, and we are able to take them through our Module 2 courses that are normally done online. So we have provided all the online tools that can help them to learn effectively. In terms of the physical accommodations, we are still working at it. But in terms of even our trainers, we have now a countrywide, we are rolling out a countrywide CBET delivery training program. And within that program, there is a unit on universal design for learning, which champions for inclusivity. So we are, of course, enlightening and creating awareness to trainers all over the country around how to be inclusive and what it means to be inclusive. Because being inclusive is about starting, when you talk about UDL, Universal Design for Learning, you start from the planning stage. So you plan knowing that you may meet a learner in class who has a certain challenge. And so you don't wait until you go to class and you find there is this learner and you start accommodating them. So we are championing for more of inclusion as opposed to accommodation where possible. And we have already taken 2,595 trainers of the National Polytechnics through this concept. Thank you.
Tekla, you can give it a check.
Our core mandate at the institution, Current Technical Training Institute for the Deaf, is to train students with disabilities, the deaf, those who do not hear completely. There are those who don't hear completely, they were born deaf. Others, they became deaf in adulthood through accidents. Accidents happen and people become deaf. A number of them are there, including trainers. And so for us, we are passionate because that's our core mandate. And my colleague, the principal of Machakos Technical Training Institute for the Blind, I don't know whether she's here. Madam there, Dr. Nduko, and I attended a 6 weeks training conducted by the Embassy of Israel. They picked us on the basis of being institutions that train students with special needs. And there is a lot that we learned. What happens in Israel? Were it not for COVID-19, herself and I were booked by the Embassy of Israel to travel to Israel for training for 1 month. It didn't happen. We would have gone this year, but you know what is happening in Israel? You know, bad luck, can I say? So on best practices at Karen, I want to give you a story. In Karen, we conduct what we call selective admissions criteria. We use a selective admissions criteria. Let me explain, but it's in line with what the State Department requires us. What we do at Karen, for instance, students with special needs who have KCPE qualifications, that's after standard 8, are admitted at the lowest level of artisans. We now call it Kenya National Qualifications Framework Level 4. What we do, and trainers are here, I can see a good number of them. What we do, because we are passionate, we support these students, we develop them, and gradually, I tell you, they reach the highest level of KNQF, level 6, which is equivalent to the former diploma. We do it. They come after standard 8. And students who are deaf have a challenge in communication. Language is a barrier. We use sign language. In sign language, there is body communication. They can misinterpret your gestures. When you smile, they may think you are laughing at them. When you nod, they think you are telling them no. So it's a challenge, but we are up to the challenge. So we admit such students, and I tell you, we have seen a good number of them through up to that KNQF level 6, that is the diploma. They're employed in different places. We were captured by the nation media, and at the EPZ, Export Processing Zone in Earth River, we have that on record. Those students are referred to as the BCBs, yani nyuki. The BCBs that clothe the world, you know best. When they are in industry, they concentrate, these students. While others are busy chatting and talking and shouting, they concentrate on the work. Even in hotels, they have been named chefs of the year. And these are 5-star hotels, I can tell you, in the Sarova hotels. At Kepinski, we have students. At KICD, we have students. At KPLC, recently, they recruited our students, the Kenya Power and Lighting Company. I can tell you, 2 weeks ago, I was given a list of students by the Embassy of America, USA, to authenticate their certificates. They had gone for interviews for employment. And they started at that level of artisan. And they moved on to the certificate. They moved on to the diploma. They take longer. They can take artisan. The artisan courses that take 1 year for them, they may take up to 3 years. But I tell you, they still make it. And remember, trainers, you are here. I'm also a trainer. These students sit the same exams. The exams are not different, but we thank God we have the Tvet, SIDA on board now. For them, they are better in hands-on. They are able to do what they see, unlike what they perceive. What they see, they do better. So with Tvet, SIDA programs, and the KNQA, Kenya National Qualifications Authority, thank God KNQA came on board, and the encouragement for us to pick these students after KCPE. Most of them don't go to high school. That's why I am mentioning about the KCPE graduates. They don't make it to secondary schools. And those who do, the highest they score is a D+. But generally they score D- or E. But we pick those with E's. Our best are those from KCSE with an E. But I tell you, these students have made it to the diploma, to the KNQF level 6. And there is proof. In addition to that, let me mention.
Quickly, just make it.
I'm just about to finish. I'll actually read through, just mention government subsidy. The fees that those students pay in our establishments is highly subsidized. Thank you, Director. Thank you, government. So these students are attracted by that. Let me tell you what touches them most, as much as I may not have much time, but that is the practical experience. Special diet, food, good food. At Karen, we give them good food. These students, we give them sausages once per week. We give them eggs. We have dairy cows up to about 15 of them. We give them tea 4 times. That causes them to be retained in the institution. We give them, they eat meat, beef 4 times a week. We make mandasi, the big ones I saw in Mombasa. 2 times in a week, Tuesday and Thursday. And you know, through word of mouth, the enrollment in Karen grew. They tell others, twende huko. You know, there is good food. And also an attractive environment, like you said. Those of you who have been in Karen, you've seen it. It's attractive. It's beautiful. And you know, we are in the suburbs. Huh?
Thank you.
So this helps these students to build their self-esteem. You'll find them all over taking selfies. They send to others who are in the countryside. They come as far as Mandera and Tanzania. Ugandans are in our institution. Something else that we do full-time, almost around the clock, our moderator, medical attention, care and support. Why? Most of these students, other than being deaf, they have other underlying conditions. A lot of them are epileptic. Have you seen somebody fall? Mumewahi kuona? Somebody falling, you'd run away. A lot of them are epileptic. Others are on ARVs, a good number. You know what ARVs are? And the county government of Nairobi, we thank the government of Nairobi. They seconded to us a medical officer. I asked her to come around. Scholar, where are you? This lady, Scholastica Oye, could you rise, has brought a lot of value to that institution. She is called even in the night when a student falls. When they fall, it can be fatal. You know that? What would happen? They would bite their tongue. Those on ARVs are scared to take them, so she keeps those medicines, the ARVs, and she administers because of stigma from the other students. So medical care also boosts these students. And then full accommodation. We are given resources. All students in that institution are residents.
Thank you.
And lastly, I said, we also have outreach programs to counties. We have visited counties, and county government send students. They sponsor students. The Kenya Society for Deaf Children sponsors students to that institution. The Rotary Club of Karen and the Rotary Club of Nabo, they engage with us, and that is what we are doing. And I can tell you, the numbers would have been higher if the facilities in that institution were able to accommodate more than the 1,500 students that we have. We can only, at the moment, admit up to 1,500. There could have been more. But we give priority to students with special needs, male and female. I told you our student population of females is 682, and the males are 728, total 1,410.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Crispin, taken from where Tekla has left it, is the question of policies that are able to promote equal opportunities on the one hand, also on the other hand, how then industry players, the government, and partners can to ensure that then they are onboarded into the employment.
Thank you so much. So even as we do this, I quickly wanted to add, and I know most of us, if we had time, we could process this further. There are all these things we are saying in terms of gender, in terms of inclusivity. You can realize that it can't be done by one institution. It needs all of us. It needs the training institutions. It needs the employer. It needs everyone, including the civil society organizations. It needs families to change their mindsets and then get to appreciate this deeply. Further to that, having engaged a lot with a lot of government institutions and individuals in terms of gender and inclusion, and of course the fear. I have been in a number of companies, and they would tell you the cost, the investment, in terms of the financial investment that they have to incur to make, for example, the built environment favorable for those with disabilities, and even have basic things like washrooms for men and women. The fear to incur that cost also makes it become a barrier on the other side to really want to advance this course. But once we've been able to put up a business case as to why this is important investment to make and how the return on investment will be realized down the line, then of course they can open up to that. But also, as men who are here, we know the issue of internalized misogynies, the unconscious biases. I've engaged even government guys on the subject of gender. In camera, they will say they support. Off the camera, they say, Crispin, only to a certain extent. You know these things. You know where we come from. We can't really necessarily be with them on the same table. And what that tells you that we need that true conversion. And I think it's a conversation we've had with NGC and Tvet and others, that even the students themselves have to be taken through the Gender Course 101 at the beginning of the semester so that they are made aware in the process, and even by the time they transition to the workplace, they know what it is that they ought to do. Now, in terms of the policy, I won't go further because of time, but I want to highlight quickly that having understood the barriers, having seen the challenges, having appreciated the depth of all this, I have had the privilege early in the last year and early this year to work with the NGC and, of course, the KEPS and others to come up with what we call the gender mainstreaming policy. I think we are not preempting this. I think a time is coming when it shall be launched, and of course with the support of GIZ and many other players. This was, we call it the Model Gender Mainstreaming Policy for Technical and Vocational Education and Training. That's the Tvet sector, with the elements of inclusion. Of course, this is as diverse as it can get, getting all the players in place. And having appreciated that it cannot be read alone, but with the Constitution, with the National Policy on Gender and Development, with all the other policies that exist, I just want to highlight 2 or 3 things. Quickly, one of the things I want to mention from this policy as I open it, of course, you're going to get the full version of it soon. It comes in to provide the following. Number 1, a framework for action in inculcating gender sensitivity in the Tvet institutions mandate, and of course, intentionally address underlying barriers such as gender stereotyping, issues of gender discrimination, and the issues, of course, of gender influence on career choices. That has been said. This has gone deeply into an aspect of gender analysis so that the gender issues are critically picked up. Another thing is also to this policy would focus on creating a gender-friendly environment for both public and private Tvet institutions with appropriate support systems and incentives, which have just been mentioned about. Because with a framework, then this is going to be done. Another thing it will do is it will improve the Tvet institutional capacity on gender competence at all levels through a range of measures which will be relevant and applicable to each institution. The Tvet ecosystem is quite long. And so as long as it is, and with all the institutions within the ecosystem, then there would be sort of tailored approaches to gender mainstreaming. Another thing it will do, it will help to sort of promote interconnectivity of the socio-economic, institutional, and the systemic gender and transformational measures across the entire ecosystem. It will be a guide for statutory requirements on the gender-responsive workforce. And lastly, it will help us to focus, to have the Tvet itself have what we call gender-focused capacity building and knowledge management for the Tvet institutions. Now, this policy then, looking into the entire spectrum of policies that we have as a country, it brings them into one place where you can find them and reference them accordingly, and then commits the institutions to exactly do that. So this just to create an appetite that it's coming, and it will be an honor for you and I to be able to implement it for the boys and girls that are coming up, and create an environment where they can easily transition to the workplace and make it more profitable, more productive, and of course increase performance, and have all these talents and innovations really that we have neglected for such a long time inculcated in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. So from Priscilla, I want to give us half a minute to all of us to just cap it. A minute, we just cap it. Priscilla?
Thank you very much. I think I'll just, again, pick up from Crispin. The challenge I always feel like we face as a country, not only what we're discussing here today, is that if we all went to our offices, especially the government, we will find policies upon policies upon policies. Right now we have, as private sector, like I said, we already have the gender mainstreaming policy for private sector, how to onboard, equal pay for equal work. So that's taken care of. When we come to the side of government, there's the policy that he has referred to that is supposed to be launched. So I think the task for us now is how do we make sure that we have a framework, a roadmap of implementation? How do we make sure that all the partners understand and not have side conversations where in the open we say one thing, but behind closed doors, we are not committed.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I want to echo what she has said. Let's talk to each other. Partnership is very important. I can tell you, government cannot do it alone. UTVETs cannot do it alone. Us as advocates, organizations of persons with disabilities cannot do it alone. Please let's talk together to make sure that inclusion becomes a reality. I want to give one policy proposal. We have learners with intellectual disabilities who cannot write exams the way other learners do, but they're very good at hands-on, you know, if it's tiling, if they have learned in class on how to tile, they can do it. We need policy proposals to recognize that people write exams differently. Why can't we examine these students with intellectual disabilities and also those who have autism in a way that, you know, they're demonstrating what they can do. They can show their skills as opposed to just focusing on written exams. Thank you.
Thank you. For me, I would encourage the academia to carry out more research. Let us collect more data so that when whatever decisions we are making, we have a lot of data that is disaggregated from our institutions. Let us strengthen our monitoring and evaluation systems so that we are monitoring how we are implementing the policies. And from time to time, even these policies, we can also re-examine and ask ourselves, are our policies gender blind or are they gender aware? Because there are two things, to have a policy, but a policy can also be gender blind and not gender aware. Thank you.
In the education sector, in the government of the Republic of Kenya, education is recognized as a basic tool to achieve quality of life for everyone, for every Kenyan. to improve livelihoods, we have to access education. So then, what do we say? No one should be left behind. I'm sure you've heard that statement. No one should be left behind. Male, female, persons with disabilities, we should make efforts in our own small ways and bring them on board. Lastly, gender mainstreaming in our Tvet institutions should be one of the central features of addressing the gender-based disparities. I don't know whether we all understand what gender disparities are. You know, the differences in numbers of males and females, even in positions of leadership, staffing, decision-making. You'll find that one gender is focused on and the other gender is not. And excluded are persons with disabilities. The quality of life can only be improved in Kenya if everyone is brought on board. So let us work, let us speak, tell those who don't know about these special establishments in Tvet to bring students to our institutions. There are 4 of them. There is Current Technical Training Institute for the Deaf. There is Machakos Technical Training Institute for the Blind. There is Sikri Technical Training Institute for the Deaf and Blind. Imagine God created people who are deaf and blind. You can imagine how they survive. But they survive and they study. And then there is St. Joseph's Nyangoma in Siaya, which is for the deaf. These establishments are government managed. A lot of subsidy comes to our institutions. So tell Kenyans, tell your people, tell pastors in churches to know that they are there. And they'll access what he said. I like that. You know, those are concepts that are now upskilling. He said upskilling and reskilling. With that, thank you very much.
I want to invite you, ladies and gentlemen, our stakeholders. It's about inclusivity and diversity. It is the most heaviest of the subject. So one of the way to ensure that we move together is to accommodate this kind of a panel in terms of your time. So I want to request you, we give us about 3-5 minutes to hear questions and your views, and then we can try to our best of our capacity to respond to them. Thank you. 10 minutes have been given. Thank you.
May I start here? As usual, please just straight to the question. No history behind it, because lunch is waiting.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Mark Ambito. I'm a researcher. My question basically goes to Cyprian. Something has come out on this issue, a very serious issue, that the elephant in the room is actually the attitude. And the attitude starts at a very early age, from the time you are born up to the time you grow. By the time they reach Tvet, the attitude is formed. So the question is, with these people of Ngek, what is the government doing, okay, at its level so that this attitude that people have on the disability and women is cleared at an early age so that by the time we come up, the journey is actually halfway won. Thank you.
Very good question. This subject is on gender. I need to be careful. A little. Is your hand here, lady? A lady was asking. Okay, I'm coming. Please allow me, because I have just seen the only lady who has raised her hand.
Thank you. My name is Grace Mauti, Principal, Kendege Technical and Vocational College. My question goes to Crispin, to Madam Makato, and to Priscilla. And I'm asking a question on gender. And I just want a take on this, because the gender issue is very real, and it's really affecting our students, even in colleges, even before they graduate and go to the job market. So my issues are 3. 1, in our institutions, you can all agree with me as principals here, we have a lot of gender issues, and unfortunately, these gender issues are affecting the girl child. What are we doing in our institutions, or what will be your take for our institutions where we have the girl child battling a lot, one, with pregnancies, two, with babies. They are coming to college with babies, they are attending class with babies. And therefore, this brings me to the second item that we need to think about. How can we make it more accommodative or more of inclusion, just like Madam Milka said, so that these girls can attend class, can do exams, even with their babies with them. Number two, a quick one, I'll be very fast. Okay, when these people are translating to the job market, I don't know. Even myself, I ask myself, if I am faced with a young man like Mr. Maina here, and a young girl who is 7, like Madam Hope, who is 7 months pregnant or 6 months pregnant, and both of them are applying for the job, which person will I take for that job? Despite the fact that they are all qualified, knowing very well that within 2 months' time, this young girl is going to apply for maternity leave. Which company is going to take that? Finally, in our places of work at the industry, and Crispin, these young girls and the young mothers, they are doing a noble job of taking care of the babies, the future children, the future students in our technical institutions. And they are battling with taking care of their babies, and they have to come to work with the babies, whether they have a babysitter or not. How are we making our workplaces conducive to these young mothers? Finally, at the job market, yes, we have the issue of night shifts. How are we making it possible for the ladies to be able to do their work, whether at night or during the day, without fearing that it is getting to night? How will I make it home if I am leaving my workplace at 3 a.m.? Thank you.
Thank you.
I've finished.
No more finally. Those are about 4 questions. And I want to request my moderator to kindly let's double on that. And we also to be very fair with the people who are very digital and have been sending a lot of questions up there. So the second round, we're going to take from there directly, okay? So could we quickly just run on that? But panelists, as usual, 60 seconds is the maximum you can answer a question. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for the questions you've asked. Number one, I want to say that the subject of unpaid care work right now in Kenya is a subject that is key. It's being discussed all over. And if you've noted recently, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, they have been able to come up with what we call the time use survey, under which we are currently analyzing that report to be able to quantify the unpaid care work in order to really see how can we seal the loopholes. And I want to, in terms of the the girls or the young women going or attending classes or colleges with their children, it's a solution, again, as Salia said, we'll need a multi-stakeholder approach. In this case, there are good models right now that have been piloted in the country, and I would say, for example, there's an organization called Kidogo. Kidogo is a social enterprise on childcare. What they are doing is they're working with the Tvets so they can provide care for the children of the students, so that they, within these facilities, there is a child care center or facility that they have established, and you come in there, you drop your kid, you go to class, you come back, you breastfeed, you go back to class, in the evening you go with your kid home. So that is helping to really take off the burden of you worrying, being in class and tending to your little child. And I think I can leave the rest to my team to answer, but I want to tell you that it's doable. Maybe the last thing in terms of employment and night shift. We are in the place where women, we always say that what men do, we can. We can do even better. Even night shift, we can do better. In my building, where my office is, there are ladies, they are night shift. I always ask them, do you have young children? How does it make you feel that you're working here tonight? And stuff like that. So as you engage with them, some could be desperate and say it's the nature of work. They told us we signed up for it, and so they have assigned us this duty. But then it goes back to how the company is also looking at it. And of course, when you look into how do we create an enabling environment for both men and women to be able to work even in the different kind of shifts, the conversation that we can have and we will continue to have, but then we must create that environment. Continue. Please, Sally. Sorry.
So to answer your question about, what was it? No, not night shift, it was, the pregnant lady. Yeah, who will you hire? So for most, so the overarching policy says that you hire someone who's qualified, and especially if they are underrepresented in a department. So if it's the female, she's pregnant, but she's qualified, and that department needs females, you're supposed to do that. And you find for most organizations that are multinationals or big corporates, they do not discriminate. So it doesn't matter whether the lady is expectant or not, they'll be absorbed. But it depends also on the organizations. But for sure, the larger corporations are able to absorb the person as long as they're qualified.
All right. I think that those ones are quite clear. You had something quickly? Go ahead.
Maybe just to add on the inclusive part of pedagogy, that is training, where we have young mothers or young fathers, we also need to be a bit inclusive in terms of what kind of assessments are we offering to them. Can we be flexible and offer multiple ways of assessment so that they can be able even to get assessed, to attend to class, so that our classes are not always face-to-face, so that we have a blended kind of approach, and that also enhances inclusiveness. Of course, the issue of having daycare centers or baby care centers in our institution is not like an option right now if we really want to promote equal access.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to our digital questions that have been sent here, if we could have that. I see one that is saying, I see we are championing too much for girl child. Who will champion for the boy child? Boy child is suffering silently. I think the question came from somewhere there. I don't know who's going to talk about that. Especially if your panelist, one of ladies would be better. Just choose for me one. I'm just throwing the question. Let's see another one here. I'm not a vegetable. Oh, sorry. This is not a vegetable. Okay. I'm not a vegetable. Okay, sorry. I think the vegetable was way back. Sometimes, and even more often, it is other people who make decisions on behalf of PWDs. Could it be that their marginalization is by design, or the very people who should champion for this group of people? I think some of them are comments, but maybe it's by design. It's a very good point there, right? Was that you? I saw you clapping. Thank you so much. Let's see another one. Trainers to start enterprises in their trade areas, I think, urgently, and those who cannot to work part-time in industry and a dual. No sitting in the staff room. Okay, that's a good comment. All right, let's see more. Do we have really equal employment opportunities for persons with disabilities? That's a good question. Please float for one person to answer that very quickly. Let's see another comment here. When these institutions were being built, did they consider amenities for social disabilities? I think that's the same question within the building, or we need to redesign. So that's a question on disabilities. How comes we could not attain gender balance in the panel discussions on matters of equity and inclusivity? I think that's for you. Why, my goodness. How can the gap being created as the number of male enrollment in Tvet is going down, I think in Bridge 2? What is your take on the perception that some fields are for specific gender? For example, the cosmetology being. That's a good question. We are noticing the numbers are going down, especially for the male. Hey, interesting. Let me see if there are any other comments or questions. Just hold on, because we are trying to ensure that we have a quick round here. Does everybody got a question? I hope you are signing. Make sure you are signing. I think Rita was was an option, I guess, since it examines 90% practical. So no need to have a lot of bodies doing the same thing. I think that's a comment. Appointments to public offices should be made on merit and not as a reward. That is why probably who killed what? Okay, probably we killed all the public parastatals. We need to focus on what we stifle, so that on what will stifle the success of dual training. Thank you so much for that comment. I can't see. Let me see if this is a question. Are Tvet institutions not copying the government on the will to have gender parity addressed or a given cold shoulder? It's an interesting one. Please send them up. Let me see, because I'm also looking at some people are looking at me the other eye. Could you assign very quickly? If you manage to answer each of those questions in 30 seconds, we could do another.
Okay, to Priscilla, I want you to take the question on equal opportunities for persons with disability in the employment sector. It's a question of marginalizations of persons with disability, a question of design. Sally, you can take that one for us. Who will champion the boy child? Crispin, you please take that. Why is it that some courses or some fields are for female? Madam Tekla, you can take that one for us. And then gender balance in that terms of the panel, I will take that one. Yes.
Thank you. So I think the first thing is data. So even as much as we say that industries are compelled to have 5% of their workers to be PWDs, I'm aware that there are some organizations that do want to hire, but it may sound ignorant, but sometimes they say they don't know where to get them from. So maybe a collaborative effort for us to get the data on that. But also, again, like Sarah said earlier, there are different types of disabilities, so that's an issue that we're also trying to address in the policy that we're coming up with on inclusivity.
Yeah, so on the issue of whether marginalization of persons with disabilities is by design, I want to say marginalization of persons with disabilities happens right from home. Yeah, it's the way we treat persons with disabilities. You'll find there's some families where if they have a child with a disability, they'll get the least priority to go to school. They'll make the decisions for you. And this situation is even worse for girls with disabilities. So this is the narrative that we are trying to disrupt. Persons with disabilities can do. They have aspirations, They want families. Many of them have families. Some of them are the sole breadwinners in their families. They are employees. They are your customers, So the idea is for us to remove the misconceptions about persons with disabilities. They're part of the human diversity, in our societies. I was in a conference last week, and we were talking about data and how data can be used to accelerate achievement of SDGs. And somebody put some things in perspective that, persons with disabilities make at least 15% of any population. So if that means about 1.3 billion people in our planet have a disability, it means you could take, they could form the third largest country in the world. And that is the same thing in our country. Yeah, at least 10% of Kenyans have one form of a disability. Yeah, and we have families who have disabilities, we have friends, we have neighbors, etc. There's somebody at least who has a disability somewhere. So it starts with our attitudes. Yeah, and attitudes is what causes people to be excluded, to be marginalized.
Yes, go ahead.
On the question of why perhaps females would prefer certain courses vis-a-vis even the males, why they prefer certain areas for training, this is what I would say. We can trace these to where persons were raised, where we were raised and how we were raised. We were taught to believe that It's only the males who could even drive a car. It's lately that even females have taken up now the challenge to drive on vehicles. My husband doesn't allow me to drive certain vehicles. Ananiambia, wachana na hiyo. Hiyo ni yangu ni mimi. Hutaweza ku-engage. You hear that? Then you have seen signs on roads during construction. Wameandika men at work. Have you not seen? That answers it. We don't need to go far. Men at, they are excluding the women from the construction industry. Those are attitudes, rhetoric, perception, societal. So we have to deal with ourselves. Listen to this statement. Musikize. Sisi hapana taka wanawake kwa kampuni hii. Sisi hapana taka. Sisi hapana taka. Mama kuzaazaa kwenda nyumbani. Mtambo itasimama. You hear that? You can relate that? I have finished.
Thank you so much. A quick one is my brother Ambith. You asked a question about social norms, and I want to say that in this country, of course, the conversation has to go all the way down at the family level. There are many studies currently on social norms measurement, so that then we're able to know what are they, and how does each community in this country look at these things, because some of the things that might be affecting others in other community is very different from yours, for example. And so it's time we had these key areas or issues and really take the discussions all the way down. And again, it's not necessarily a government thing. We just need to start changing our attitude and work towards that. In terms of the boy child, it's true, those that are crying, that when you look at the statistics in terms of the enrollment in Tvet, since 2017 all the way to last year, 2022, the number of boys has actually, or male students, has been reducing. And if I pick, this was from the KNBS Economic Survey of 2022, it tells, for example, in artisanship, you can see we had 43,000, that's male, and 4,300 students, male, and of course 5,500 female. Certificate, 17,000 certificate female, male, and 23,000 female. Diploma, 40,000 male, and 45,000 female. Now there is, of course, that kind of growth trajectory. It's a good thing on this other side, especially to us that have been looking for this talent and the skill in the ladies that has been left for far too long. But then on the other side, we have men. Men, we are becoming too choosy today. And so we need to ask ourselves, what is it that is making this number reduce on the men? And when they do not enroll in TVETs, where else are they enrolling? What are they doing? Are they decided to create their own employment, or what exactly are they doing? Where are they? So I think it's a discussion we can all have and see why are the numbers of male reducing when it comes to enrollment into TVETs. But another challenge is now when it comes to transition, even with these high numbers of female students enrolling, then more of the male finish or complete the courses and transition to the workplace. Male, female, they drop off because of the issues of pregnancies or unpaid care responsibilities. So there are many things we need to look at the ecosystem before we conclude and say the boy child is hurting. Let's be open, the boy child hasn't been hurting. When you see us engaging and involving women, it's an intentional effort to bring the one that has been below to the bar, then of course we can proceed together. Thank you.
There was a question about, somebody asked online whether there was incentives for hiring persons with disabilities. I know that KRA provides that if you, let's say if you make a capital investment as an employer, let's say you make major adjustments to support accessibility, you can claim, I think it's called a tax rebate from KRA. But the challenge, and also KRA has acknowledged this, is that sometimes, what do you call it? Claiming these things is like a journey. It's like a Herculean task. It can take you a very long time, so it's no longer an incentive. But those provisions are there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My panelists, on the question of the composition of this panel, I want to acknowledge it's a reflection of the challenges that the boy child is going through. It's a question of the attitudes in our society. that we are going through. But in principle, the panel was actually 2/3 gender composed. In truth, most of us here, like myself, we are sitting in for people who are officially supposed to be here, but because of other official engagements, then we had to. So by design, the panel is actually 2/3 composed by design. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let's appreciate the panel one more time. Can we have some of the comments as well? Let's just quickly look at what people shared. I know. We just want to appreciate these people. That we need more industry players in such conferences to explain to us the challenges, successes, and any recommendations we can use to incorporate in our training. Another one is the issue of gender inclusivity is and will always remain controversial, especially if the activists cannot differentiate equity and equality, those kind of things. How inclusive are you when you allow elderly men and women to go for pedagogy and all others fighting to partake for the same training? Who is that? Anyway, I think it's good comments. There you go. I don't know whether there's any other comment here. Thank you so much. I think we can close it at that, right?
Yeah, there are very many.
Yes, they're quite heated. That's the best word. Yeah. Okay. This one is burning. What do we do?
Which one?
Do you promise 30 seconds? You don't know. It might be 1 hour, and it's like, so if it's only 30 seconds, go.
Since I have 30 seconds, I won't even say my name. I just want to thank the panelists, and my comment is on the analysis, the level analysis we do. We have talked a lot about girl child. We've talked a lot about the person who was talking about pregnancy. But I think there are other threats that affect sometimes even the boy child more. Why are we not talking about drugs? Why are we not talking about suicide? Why are we not talking about the threats of HIV/AIDS? Because those things, in terms of alcohol, substance abuse, it affects access, but it also affects performance. I know very many young men in my village who cannot perform. They have diplomas and good qualifications, but they are already taking some other substances, which also create a different problem. When it comes to policy, I'm a policy analyst. We sometimes have policies that are good, but then there are also other barriers. We have a policy on girls going back to school. If you are a girl in a slum, who will you live with that child to go back to school? So we will be singing how we have this policy, and it's a good policy. But that girl in Mukuru, Kwanjenga, will not be able to go back to school because the mother also has to hustle. So in terms of doing our analysis, we need to look at deeper threats. There are other inequalities and other barriers and bottlenecks that even as institutions of learning, we need to be aware of and come up with strategies of addressing. Thank you.
Wow. By the way, as she was speaking, some people also saying one of the other things that we need to be careful about is mental health. Absolutely,
yes,
right? Yeah.
And I think the safe thing to also say is that mental health awareness is not just for any gender.
Yeah.
It's crossing over.
Absolutely.
Both male and female. So we need to be careful.
Yeah. Pick this microphone before he starts speaking, but
Yes,
he's about to.
But I'm just about to.
Yes.
Is there a Tvet for dancing MCs? Because the music, as we came in, was very good. The program is missing some element of dancing.
Don't worry. After lunch, these guys are hungry, but don't worry. You know this guy, that remember we were dancing in the morning. Yeah. Well, you are briefing yourself, but don't worry. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, let me see by show of hands.
Yes.
How many of us believe that gender equity is achievable? Just check, it's achievable.
Guy.
How many of us think it's a myth?
Ni story poa. Yani content.
Okay. No, I see that. It's okay. It's good to just check how the house thinks.
What do you think?
Myself? Myself?
Yeah.
Why are you putting me on the spot?
Because we want to hear.
I think it's achievable because you're doing what I can do.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just...
This has gone south real quick. But I think we have significant strides to getting there.
You're right.
Yeah, it's not given that tomorrow morning we'll wake up and the sun will be in favor of all.
Yeah.
But we're making significant strides.
But I must add, that section where the men were saying boy child is suffering, that section, I also believe at some point we empowered one side and forgot another. So it's time to now look at the balance. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Can we go
I
for
have
lunch?
a strong opinion, but I will not share it now.
Yes.
I would like us to go and eat. I don't want to be the one standing between you and a meal.
Yes.
It's very sensitive. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask that our panelists, ministry leadership, and development partners, please exit the room so that you can go and have your lunch. Let's appreciate our panelists.
As they leave.
Thank you so
Asanteni
much,
sana.
Mr. Desire.
Thank you.
Great, great. Let's appreciate them as they're leaving. Ministry leadership, development partners. We have some well-able individuals who are willing to help us walk out.
Yeah.
Let's have them.
Yeah.
And as usual, principals and ILOs, please remain seated.
Tuko na mambo yetu ya nyumbani. As usual, we want to speak.
Na ndo wale wa nyumbani, ndo wale wa nyumbani.
Wenye nyumba ndio hawa.
Wenye nyumba wamefika. But please, ministry, leadership, development partners, please, will allow us to excuse you at this point in time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
I think also NGO, civil society representatives, private sector, and our very own from Nairobi and Kiambu counties. Thank you so much. All right. Are we done? I'm just giving them time so that they can allow us the space.